You can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Megan Wakeman, and I'm the collections librarian at CDLC. I also oversee the DAP program, that's Direct Access Program. Um, I wanted to do this annual meeting a little differently. Normally, I go through my slides and present on the program and then show everyone afterwards what's available on the CDLC website. And I thought, why not we actually show people where everything is located first? And then when I actually discuss it, you'll be like, oh, she's talking about that thing. All right. So we're at the CDLC homepage, www.cdlc.org. And up here at the top tabs, as you can see underneath the sharing tab, most of my responsibilities lay underneath this tab. And if you click on it, you can see these are discovery methods, and then these are our LibGuides, and we do have one solely devoted to the DAP program. All of this information currently is available online, and any member of the public can see this on our website. We have a general overview of the program, kind of a little history about it, explanation, as well as PDFs for all of these documents, and these are all available, like I said, on the website. This is the guidelines and best practices. These are essentially all of the rules and the nitty-gritty details for the program. It's about 11 pages long. This is the guidelines for users. This is the form that I say, hey, print this out for them and hand it to them with their DAP card. Like, this is what they need to know. So they can read that online right here. If your library is not a DAP participant and you would like to join the program, this is the application right here that you can fill out and email to me. And this is a copy of our DAP brochure. It's a 2-page trifold, and it's in color. So you're certainly welcome to print those out for your own patrons. If you have some difficulty with that or you'd like it on a harder card stock, please contact us and we'll let you know about that. This is also the directory to this is the DAP directory, the directory of participating members. It's an Airtable. Let's give it a second to load, but these are also all public information available. This is the information that you set forth in your library's DAP policies, as well as the DAP contact person's information and so forth. You can see which categories libraries are willing to lend, any restrictions on the materials available if possible, how to contact the library, where it's located, and the DAP coordinator's name and contact information. And libraries can set their own policies as well as have any other extended information, such as, Excelsior University is, an online school. So you have to do call and arrange for a visit. And this up here, so that's the directory. And then we have the DAP's contacts only page. And this is where more documents are available and more forms. And we're going to talk specifically about a lot of these. But if you're trying to access the information, we used to have, you might hear about it legacy-wise that your library had its DAP password. We've changed that. It's now a universal password for all libraries. So you can contact us to get that information. All right, and so these are the resources for the DAP libraries. The patron database form is pretty much the most important one. It's the one I'll be referencing a lot in the next hour. Once you've actually issued and handed the card to the patron, this is the form that I need you to fill out so that the card gets technically registered with CDLC so that we have a record of the patron's name and their DAP card number. If you need more DAP cards, just fill out this form. It's a simple Google form. You can even put a specific number of cards that you need if you don't like our options. I get the email every day, and I try to prioritize that because it can take a while. CDLC is no longer on a courier, so I have to mail you out your DAP cards. A copy of the patron application. So this is, the part that the patron would fill out. And this is actually, the library will be keeping this, but, it's their name, library card number, signature, etc. The directory update form, if your contact information for your library has changed or you want to change your policy, fill out this form, and then you'll see those changes happen pretty soon on the DAP directory. And that's where you want to, if you want to make changes on the DAP directory, fill out this form. This is just another copy of the library participation form again. I just put it there in a second place if you would need a copy of it. And this was this year's annual statistics form. I sent this out to everybody earlier this summer, but this is where I also placed it. And the DAP Contacts Group Forum. Everyone has access, or I can grant you access to the Google Forum. So if you're on my DAP's contacts list, that means you have access to this. So you can access this and then actually see the history of DAP emails. You are always welcome to send out an email to this list if you have a question or you want to contact other libraries, and you're welcome to have discussions on it as well. If you're new to the DAP program, and you want to see previous emails, then this would be a good place to check. Right? So that's all that we have here. Close this out and then bring over my slides, and then we'll get into DAP. Okay, hope everybody can see that. This is the DAP Annual Meeting. Like I said, DAP stands for Direct Access Program. I'm going to go over a little bit about the history of the program and how it's changed. We're going to talk about how to actually create the card for the patron and what to do with it. And the trickier thing is then how patrons use the card. So we'll talk about lending in DAP. I'm going to show you some of our stats for the past year, including the results for the statistics form that everyone filled out, and kind of list our resources that we have. All right, so DAP is a legacy program. It's been around a while. It's a few years older than me. First created in '74 for what situations when ILL was not fast enough, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because people might want to access a journal and they weren't going to be emailed about it. It would take a little bit of time to retrieve it from the stacks and make a copy. And I don't even know what they did. I assume they mailed it. So that it was, created as a way for other libraries to interact, for other researchers to go to different academic libraries that maybe they weren't living that close to or weren't working at, and to kind of broaden our access to these collections. It's patron initiated, as in like we're not handing out DAP cards to everyone as soon as they get their regular library card. It has to come up when these situations arise where we feel like there's just not enough information at the hand. So sometimes when ILL is not an option, or, if you're not quite sure of what you're looking for, when you don't quite have the citation information, or you think it's like sort of similar, or maybe you're looking for topics of a certain collection or area of interest, and you're still not quite sure what you're looking for. If ILL works, it's faster, it's expedient, it's often automated, it can be very fast. I get article requests back to people the same day that I enter them. So I would definitely say, really, if you think that the patron just needs to borrow a book via interlibrary loan, just fill out that interlibrary loan request and take care of that. They'll get it very quickly. And it'll take up a lot less of everyone's time. And it's also voluntary. Libraries can join this program and they can leave this program at any time that they want. I like this quote a lot. We say this is directly from the guidelines and best practices that DAP supports the cooperative spirit of library access. And that is essentially what it came from, where it came from, and why it's still here is that we know that we're stronger together. And I like to say it's really not a tit for tat program. You can't just say, oh, they're borrowing a little bit more than they're lending. It's sort of like we're all contributing. And CDLC is made up of all sorts of different types of libraries. And as you know, you can't really just walk into a public high school and use the items in their library. Those have to be done, lended through ILL. Obviously, you can't walk into a school. But K through 12 students are DAP card holders, and it's important that they still have this access. So I don't know. I like the quote. I think that's the spirit of the program, is that we're really trying to provide all of our patrons with a little more access to what they're looking for. So who is a DAP patron? First of all, CDLC has its public library systems members, its school library systems members, and academic and special libraries as well. And any of the faculty, staff, professional researchers from those institutions, as well as the students, be they undergraduate or graduate students from those academic and special libraries, are entitled to DAP cards. Patrons from public library systems may apply for a DAP card. They should really be permanent library card holders, no temporary library cards. And I say people with good borrowing history. Not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not talking about someone who's had fines or has even lost an item. I'm talking about somebody who's addressed the problems on their card, has not violated the behavioral policy at your library, and that you won't be, you feel good about issuing a card to. And selected high school students. Really, we're talking about juniors and seniors in high school, not a middle school student from, our smaller grades. And it should usually teacher or librarian initiated, that they know that the student has a project or something that they're working on, or they need access to a different library. And what does DAP offer? This is a big question because people want to know, well, can I get this or that, or can I get access to their databases? And well, yes, often. I mean, if some these are the materials up top what libraries offer. And I really hate to say it, but it depends. Maybe, like I said, DAP allows libraries to set its own policies. So it's important. If you're a little rural library and you really want to offer the DAP card to your patrons, but at the same time you're afraid, like you have a very limited budget and you can't, like, say, let all of your new released movies go out because they're already in such high demand, you can say we can't loan out our AV materials. It's very appropriate to say no new and popular materials or something like that. Some universities do offer access to their databases, and then some do not. Some will not might be very willing to offer you a book from their collection, but you actually cannot go inside and use their library without an appointment or at all. But they still might be willing to lend the item. You really need to read that DAP directory. That is what it's there for, to see what the policies are for the library that you're considering visiting. DAP is not a workaround. It's not a workaround to avoid the queue list. And it's not a way to just get something that some other, that your library says that you can't have or something like that. The libraries should let you know. This is a copy of the DAP card. Depending on the size of the monitor that you're watching, this is really close to life size, at least on mine. The front of it is where I would write in the issuing library's name and the serial number of the card. And the back of it is the name for the patron, their home address, their signature, their status, which is just the lending category, of whether they're an adult over 19 or if they're an undergraduate student, etc., and the expiration date. DAP cards are really good for at most up for a year. That's what I recommend. And then the patron can renew them again. If this is a student at an academic library or in a high school, it's sufficient to expire it at the end of that semester or school year, and have them reapply again if they're returning. Sometimes if your library name is very long, I might leave the issuing library there blank so that you can just put a big stamp on the back, on the front of the card instead. All right, so how to issue a card. Like I said, this is more of a patron-driven event. So it could happen specifically because the patron asks about a DAP card. Sometimes it happens naturally in the reference interview. You know, you're looking for something and the patron can't quite find it. You can't quite find it, but they're interested in this topic. You know, they've been looking, you know, it's a reference interview because you find out that maybe that this person would like a DAP card. And then I would suggest showing them the website or the brochure and say, this is something that you can do. Um, you know, make sure that your patron is eligible, that they actually have a regular library card at your library. And you can let them know about it, give them the application to fill out, and then you can give them the actual DAP card as well as the user DAP card, user guidelines. You'll keep the actual paper application and then you enter it into that patron database that I showed you earlier on the website. All right. This will make sure that therefore you have the patron's name and contact information, and that CDLC will have the patron's name and the library, the DAP card number. So if there's a problem, we'll at one library, we'll know which library issued the DAP card, and we'll have that the issuing library, the home library, will have the patron's contact information. Much like ILL has the borrowing side and the lending side, with DAP we have the issuing side, the library that issues a DAP card for their patrons. And then the lending side is the library that will lend the items to the DAP patron. So in lending, that's the tricky part, right? At least the first visit, because you can't just slap your paper DAP card on the circulation desk and say, I'd like to borrow these materials. You actually have to then get into the system, so to speak. So that's why I really recommend, if you're issuing a DAP card to your patron, to suggest that they contact the library first. Use that DAP directory and contact the person and say, hey, I'm a DAP card person and I would like to visit and borrow some materials from your library. Um, so the patron makes that initiation and they can work out anything. There, you know, this is now after COVID. It can be a real, it's a pain to visit Albany. You know, you have to deal with the parking and pay for parking and stuff like that. So I do think it's worth it to have a conversation and make sure that people know that you might be coming. Sometimes it is by appointment only. Then when you go to that library, they will take your information. It is well within the policy to ask for a photo ID as well as just the DAP card, and that they will give you some sort of temporary library card at their library or some sort of account. And then you can borrow their materials per their rules in their own integrated library system. Patron borrows the materials, the patron is responsible for returning those materials back to that specific library. That is sort of the catch. With interlibrary loan, it's always the two libraries are actually the patrons and they're borrowing with one another. And with DAP, it's sort of similar because that issuing library is ultimately responsible if something goes awry. But the patron really, when agreeing to a DAP card, is agreeing to try to return those materials directly back to the library that they borrowed from. And communication is key. So that's why it's important to always make sure that your library has at least somebody who's in charge of DAP. I know it can be a little frustrating that it only happens maybe once a year or something like that. So even though the supposed DAP expert is like, what do I do again? I was that person, so I really understand. But it does come up. And so just knowing that there's a person is good. And making sure that the information about your library and your DAP contact person is updated on the website is very helpful. If your library is going through some struggles and you just feel like, yikes, you know what, we can't issue DAP cards right now. We don't have an extra, you know, we're just, we're swamped, we're strapped. We can hide you from the directory if you want to suspend your DAP status. It's really easy. Just contact me. Um, I do know that sometimes it can be very confusing if you're in a massive institution with different floors or different access points that, somebody might walk in and say, hey, I'm interested in a DAP card. The person behind the desk says, I'm sorry, we don't do that here because they've never heard about it. And maybe they've even been working there a few months, like, no, there's no such thing. So, I don't know, this just occurred to me today. Print out one of those brochures and just talk to that other person, whether it's like the only other person in your little small library that works with you, or if it's, the head of access services, let them know, yeah, this is like, we do participate in this program and that anyone who has questions about it needs to talk to so-and-so. And, then there's their contact info. And there's no such thing as a DAP emergency. So DAP should be taken care of a little bit ahead of time. And so it's just, it's frustrating if you walk in and you can't get a card issued. But I would really, strongly recommend that all patrons who are interested in DAP cards, give their own library a heads up first and start there. But don't expect one necessarily immediately. Some libraries have been, they will specifically put in their policies, DAP cards are not issued more than 30 minutes before closing or any less than 30 minutes before closing. You need to come in before 4:30 and ask for one if you're going to get one. And that's valid. All right. So for the DAP program, CDL provides this meeting. It is in our agreement that we'll do at least one annual information session a year. But always, if you have a change in staff, or even if you don't, or if you'd like a refresher, contact me and we can do one-on-one DAP guidance. I'm happy to anytime. We provide the guidelines and borrower database. We provide the DAP cards and the promotional materials, the directory and the Google Groups, and monitor and assist with any issues as they arise. If you have an issue with a patron not returning materials or anything else, if you have any concerns, please let us know. I am happy to be the bad guy. We have had to update, and we updated them last year, the guidelines that if one library restricts a DAP user, then that DAP card will be revoked. I'm kind of going on a one and done. You know, I've been purposely vague with a lot of these because the DAP program needs to be vague because we're not interlocking everyone's ILS systems altogether. No, this is really just more of an agreement that we use, and then other libraries then update their own technology to provide this access for people. What was my point? But it sorry. So we do need to communicate about these things. I guess what I'm saying is I'm purposely vague, but all libraries have behavioral or policies about conduct, and I can't really monitor all of them or unique them all for one DAP purpose, but I would say that you have to respect all of these. If you're visiting one library, you have to follow the rules of that library. So we rely on that. We all know that you have your own policies, and CDLC supports the policies of its library members. You guys know what works best for your library. So please don't feel that you need to be twisting out things. You're making your stuff accessible. You're participating in the program. You're not entitled to take on abuse. DAP libraries have to provide is a person. They're somebody who's willing to monitor the item, the DAP cards, the program, entering that patron information. I know we're still working with paper, but I would definitely recommend making sure that you don't have any outstanding paper DAP applications. Really try to enter the patron information as soon as you've issued the card. But I really would suggest if you have more than one person issuing cards, that you keep your DAP applications in one location, you know where to look for them, and you just make sure on a regular basis that they're all updated, that they've all been entered into the system. communicating any issues or concerns, and being aware of the guidelines and expectations and following them. Like making sure that you're not extending cards past a year. You can always renew a DAP card, but making sure that people aren't applying for multiple DAP cards, etc. Okay. So these are the results. These are for, CDLC's fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. So that these are the numbers from 2024 to June 30th of this year. And 116 cards were issued to patrons and registered. That number could be higher, but that means that there's just DAP cards floating around in people's wallets and CDLC is not aware of them. I hope these colors make sense. I apologize if anyone is colorblind. This largest pie section is made up of K through 12 schools, and almost, over half of our cards issued were for high school students. 47 of the cards, it's larger, next percent were public libraries, and 8 cards were issued out of academic libraries. As you see, these were all new users. We had 10 renewals from the public libraries and a couple of renewals from our academic libraries as well. And these are the results of the stats that you filled out that I asked. Not looking for the number of cards issued, but of actually how many people visited other libraries and said, I have a DAP card and I'd like to use it here. And this would be the result that we had up to 23 with 34 items circulated. Nothing was lost, so it was a good year. And this is what's reported. I haven't worked on everyone's software here, so I don't know where numbers are retrieved from. I assume that, something's labeled that makes somebody a temporary card in the academic systems as well as the publics, and that you're able to retrieve that data and count it up. And these were sort of our previous circulation usage is for the past few years. Like I said, DAP has been around for a long time. I know I was a library clerk in 2008 when I first heard about it, and because somebody came in asking about it. My predecessor refreshed the program, and new DAP cards came out, and all of CDLC's eligible membership got a big packet. I received one of them. So it was a big year this first year. And as you can see, the first column represents the number of cards that were issued, which was close to 300 at 277. And lending visit cards were was over 200. And then, almost it was like practically like averaging 2 items per cards issued, really. 500, a little less recorded the years before. Obviously, when COVID hit, well, that changed everything. All of our libraries shut down. So we were, the DAP cards were still being issued. Everything was normal up and through March, and then it just dropped off. At that point, it was weird. DAP had naturally just self-selected itself out. Libraries were closed and people couldn't visit anything. So I did not cancel the program because it felt like we were already saying no to so many patrons, and I wasn't going to make it more miserable. And I even said, if somebody asks for a DAP card, issue it to them. Well, I mean, it's really their mission and journey to try to find a library that's open that they can visit, because I just didn't want libraries to have one more thing to say no to. And sure enough, sometime after July 1st of 2020, we had this number is 6. I don't know why it's not showing it to me right now, but it is 6. 6 DAP cards were issued during that time. We don't have any information about lending, really just because I didn't ask for statistics these years. It didn't seem necessary. But then we did reassess the program. I asked people for 2022 to update their library directories, and we heard about from half. And we've hidden a lot of libraries that previously might have been included in these other numbers. going forward. And you can always join at any time, but it seemed like not hearing about it was an answer enough. And I don't think anyone's surprised that the numbers obviously dropped down, but we still had, 67 cards issued, 20 lending cards issued that we know of, and visits and checkouts happening. In the past few years, more and more DAP cards are being issued. So we had a lot for this past year. It doesn't surprise me that more cards might be issued and then not as many items checked out. I think that's some people, like I said, it's a legacy program. Like they like having library cards, makes you feel like you have a little backup. And I understand that. I definitely field calls from the public about DAP. Like I had this card a long time ago from CDLC. And it's like, yep, I know what you're talking about. And, I have to refer them to their library. CDLC does not issue DAP cards to people. Your home library does. And if you don't work or are enrolled at a participating school, then I would encourage people to ask their public library to join the program so they can get a DAP card. Uh, I do think that there's well, DAP is great that, it's always, like I say, I like to say it's plan C. Really, plan A is that you have the materials the patron's looking for, always, right? It's never checked out, it's never missing, and you certainly anticipated their every need. And then plan B is ILL or reciprocal borrowing and other stuff, getting it ASAP, right? And then DAP comes in when you can't quite get it as a plan C. Libraries have been dealing with this ongoing, and I think maybe the future is just kind of taking out the bureaucracy of the program. We're not there yet. Currently, the University at Albany and Albany Public Library have been working together on their own borrowing partnership so that City of Albany residents can get a special library card at UAlbany, and that students at UAlbany can apply online for their APL card as well. And I think that because naturally, as I'm looking at these lending stats coming in, that I think that there are some more informal borrowing partnerships that happen just to local libraries. And it makes sense. You have an academic library and you're the local public library within a mile of each other, that there's borrowing partnerships and agreements happen. So maybe that, more of those could take place locally and maybe tighten up those relationships rather than having an overall generalized program. CDLC's sister council in New York City, Metro Library and Resources Council, has their referrals program. I did link it to here, and I'm willing to send out the slides, but Metro's program it sounds very similar to DAP, and it's patron initiated. And basically the patron has to see if what they're looking for is at one of those other Metro libraries, and then they contact their library, who's presumably a Metro library, and then that person will then do the behind the scenes thing to arrange the visit or the borrowing that between those two Metro libraries. So it's still kind of taking place behind the scenes, but it's still patron initiated. And what I've noticed is that they just eliminated the paper card, really. It's pretty much the same thing. So I do think that there's a future for that. I'm not saying we're not there yet, but it's a Plan C program. I have to prioritize the ILL stuff first. But I really enjoy DAP, and I'm glad that we have this access for the people in our region. That pretty much brings me to the end. I want to remind people that lots of their questions about DAP are available online. There is the huge resources guide. Technically in that guide, once a year, libraries are supposed to fill out the paper application and have their director sign it. I really appreciate it when people do take the time to do that. I'm pretty casual, and I feel like if you also want to just submit an online update form to be like, everything's still good, that is fine. But I would like to know if people are still actively interested in participating as for their libraries or not. So I would ask that, and I will be sending this email out for anyone who's watching this recorded, that we just update our policies once a year. And that we'll just do that for September and October and be done with it. We have the DAP directory, so that's always a great way to make sure that your policies are online and available so that you, and as well as other libraries, you can actually help the patron right there in front of you, say, hey, it looks like this library might be willing to lend it to you and stuff. And I can even send them an email, or, you can get the DAP card, or you can contact this person and see. The DAP contacts only page, that's just for you, but those will have all of your hidden documents. So that's what you're looking for. And yeah, we have our own separate email for it too. I do check the DAP email every day. So when you fill out those forms, the cards requests, the patron updates, they all go to this email. It is checked. We care. I will take care of things as ASAP. That is about it from me. I'm gonna stop my screen. Does anyone have any comments? Questions? All right, I will stop recording then.
I do have one question.